Welcome to Asian ID. The moment the release date for Wild Lotus Grows in Desolation was officially announced, the comment section exploded before the trailer itself could even finish circulating across social media platforms, because one brutally honest sentence instantly summarized the mood of countless viewers waiting behind their screens, didn't it? It's them again, no wonder I kind of want to click, one viewer wrote casually. Yet wasn't that simple reaction far more revealing than any marketing slogan carefully prepared by the production team? In today's short drama market, audiences are exhausted faster than ever before, because unfamiliar faces, artificial chemistry, and endless spoonfuls of industrialized sweetness have already trained viewers to swipe away within minutes, haven't they? So why did Wild Lotus Grows in Desolation manage to seize attention almost immediately despite using themes that seem painfully familiar on paper? After all, stories about poor girls, elite students, painful separations, and reunion romances have long flooded screens like recycled dreams wrapped in different packaging. So what makes this drama feel different before it has even fully aired? Perhaps the answer lies in the fact that the story does not merely use hardship as decorative tragedy, but attempts to drag every emotional conflict back towards something painfully human, doesn't it? Hae-in plays Yi, a girl born into poverty yet carrying inside herself the dangerous mixture of pride, sensitivity, insecurity, and stubborn ambition that so many ordinary people secretly recognize within themselves. And isn't that complexity exactly what makes her feel real? Too many dramas reduce poverty into aesthetic sadness designed to make audiences sympathize briefly before moving on, yet real hardship rarely looks poetic. It lives in hesitation, silence, defensiveness, and the exhausting need to protect one's dignity at all costs, doesn't it? Yi's greatest emotional weapon is not innocence or fragility, but the constant tension between wanting love and fearing humiliation, because how can someone raised to feel less than ever believe wholeheartedly that they deserve to stand beside someone born into privilege? Invisible inferiority complex becomes the sharpest wound in the story, and perhaps that is why viewers are already emotionally attached to her before the drama has even premiered. Isn't it? Hae-in possesses a strangely grounded screen presence that fits campus dramas almost perfectly, because she does not enter scenes glowing with exaggerated main character energy, but instead resembles the kind of quiet girl many people genuinely remember from their school years. Doesn't she? She feels like someone who always has words trapped behind her eyes yet refuses to say them aloud, and isn't that restrained sadness? Meanwhile, Charon faces an equally dangerous challenge through the role of Shank. Because the cold academic genius archetype has become so overused in modern romance dramas that audiences can practically predict the emotional trajectory the moment they see glasses, school uniforms, and a permanently furrowed expression, can't they? The problem with such characters is that many actors mistake emotional distance for depth, believing silence alone automatically creates mystery, yet true restraint requires vulnerability hidden beneath control. Doesn't it? Charon's interpretation appears more layered precisely because his transformation does not happen suddenly like a switch being flipped, but instead unfolds gradually like someone slowly learning how to reveal emotions he once buried beneath arrogance and pride. Doesn't it? The most interesting aspects of Shank is not his coldness, but the way adulthood forces him to surrender the emotional power he once held during their youth. Because the boy who once stood above Yi intellectually and socially must eventually become the unwilling to bend, apologize, and chase after the person he lost. Isn't that shift fascinating? People often describe these reunion romances as crematorium wife-chasing stories filled with regret and redemption, yet apologies alone mean very little unless characters truly evolve through suffering, don't they? And perhaps this is where the chemistry between Hae-in and Charon becomes impossible to ignore, because this is already their third collaboration together, and by now their interactions no longer feel like two actors cautiously building chemistry from scratch, but rather two performers instinctively understanding each other's emotional rhythm, doesn't it? Their earlier collaborations in Day and Night Without End and Heartbeat, Message Read but Unreplied already established a strong audience connection, yet what viewers are truly chasing now is not novelty, but familiarity sharpened by emotional trust. Isn't that true? In short dramas especially, where pacing moves at ruthless speed and emotional development often has little room to breathe, actors who already share natural comfort with each other gain a massive advantage, because the camera notices even the smallest hesitation, doesn't it? A glance held too long, a pause that feels natural rather than awkward, a physical closeness free from obvious performative sweetness. These tiny details matter more than grand declarations ever could, don't they? This explains why audiences increasingly care less about celebrity status and more about emotional authenticity, because viewers are no longer desperate for untouchable superstars. but hungry for chemistry that feels believable enough to stir something inside themselves. Aren't they yet beneath the romance? Perhaps the sharpest emotional knife within Wild Lotus Grows in Desolation is neither love nor heartbreak, but class difference itself. Because nothing destroys young love more quietly than the feeling of never truly belonging in someone else's world, does it during youth. Such differences can still be temporarily hidden beneath school uniforms, exam scores, and reckless optimism, but adulthood exposes reality mercilessly, doesn't it? 7 years later, when Yi has become a teacher while Shenk returns from overseas success and entrepreneurship, the emotional imbalance between them no longer exists only in memory, but in social identity, confidence, and accumulated life experience. And how can old wounds remain bared under such conditions? Many viewers love reunion romances not because they believe blindly in fate, but because they understand too well the unbearable helplessness of loving someone deeply while simultaneously believing you are unworthy of standing beside them. Isn't that the cruel truth for people from ordinary families especially? Love often loses not to betrayal, but to reality itself. Because sometimes the deepest humiliation comes from feeling inadequate simply while breathing beside the person you love, doesn't it? This is why the drama's success will ultimately depend not on how sweet the romance becomes, but on whether it dares to confront those emotional scars honestly rather than smoothing them away beneath pretty cinematography and comforting dialogue. Won't it? Modern audiences no longer stay merely for happy endings, because they have already consumed too many empty fantasies disguised as emotional storytelling. Haven't they? What people truly want now is growth that feels earned, wounds treated seriously, and characters who change not because love magically fixes them, but because pain forces them to confront themselves honestly. Isn't that what resonates most deeply? Yi's journey matters precisely because her strength does not come from being rescued by Shenk, but from slowly building her own sense of dignity piece by piece through survival, resilience, and self-worth. Doesn't it? That is what makes her more than just another tragic romantic heroine, because she represents the quiet determination of countless women forced to grow strong long before they ever had the chance to feel safe. Doesn't she? Perhaps this is why Wild Lotus Grows in Desolation already feels larger than a typical campus reunion drama before release, because beneath the romance and nostalgia lies a far more uncomfortable question waiting for viewers to confront. Doesn't there, when people who once loved each other fail because of fear, pride, and class difference rather than lack of emotion? Can time alone truly heal what reality once destroyed? And if two people meet again years later carrying completely different identities, are they still the same souls who once loved each other desperately in the first place? Thank you for watching the video. See you again.